Hello everybody, this is Glen Mowrer, and we're here today to do a further episode of the Next Step TV Santa Barbara Cable 17. Show is shown live, not live, shown in when it's current on Cable 17 in Santa Barbara, and you can watch it there on multiple airings. But it's also streamed onto Ustream and YouTube, and if you're interested in watching it on those media, you can Google the Next Step TVSB. That TVSB is important, and you can see this show or other shows that we've done on subjects of interest to Santa Barbara, and some of them we hope are of interest to the greater public about broader problems. But today we're going to specifically talk about a problem which is on its face associated with the county of Santa Barbara and the local community, but more generally is certainly a commentary on the nature of America and how we go about spending tax monies and revenues and what things we spend them on. And the subject today is Santa Barbara jail blues. Trying to be cute, I guess, doesn't really have a lot to say, but the point being that we're all sort of sad to see what's happening in the development of our penal systems in the county of Santa Barbara and the nation. To help us discuss today is Joseph Cain. Joe is a community activist, I guess would be the best descriptive.
I think so, yes.
He has a lot of concern about jails. He worked as about jails, about community needs. Worked as a director at Direct Relief International. He's worked as a research biologist, an educator at UCSB, Antioch, Ventura College. Advanced degrees from University of Texas.
I do.
Notre Dame. Two of my football foes. I'm a USC guy.
Oh my.
The Autonomous University of Central America and Costa Rica, and others. Well-educated and well-traveled man. He's been studying the jail situation in Santa Barbara County for years in conjunction, and worked with Russell Trenholm,
right,
and and others, and you can get some this data that he's collected. I'm just trying to get an introduction here, but before we get too far on the road, I want to make sure that you understand that there's a huge amount of work that Joe and Russell and others have done about the facts behind what's going on in Santa Barbara, and you can find that at the website SBJAILFACTS.INFO, which will be on the screen occasionally, and we'll refer to some of the data perhaps in the course of this commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, let's talk about where we are in Santa Barbara and how we got here. For at least 2 or 3 decades, when I was the public defender, for example, back in the 1980s, the sheriff, the public defender's office, brought a lawsuit against the jail for overcrowding. The jail was overcrowded back then, and we were successful, along with some private lawyers, in getting an order they had to uncrowd the jail. So the fight about jail crowding and about the main jail in the Santa Barbara immediate South County area being over full has been a long one. Among causes are many things. It's not just because there's criminals there, too many criminals. Mm-hmm. But crime has gone down in California and the nation, and we'll have a chart on the screen. We can talk about that in a bit. But the quest to build another jail in the North County Jail is a long-term quest. Tell us a little bit about that from your perspective. You've been watching that.
Right. Well, I came 40 years ago to Santa Barbara. I came in 1976. And I had been in South America, Colombia, and Brazil for 4.5 years. And so I'd seen incarceration in other places, including in dictatorships and in problem areas with drugs and so on like that, traveled all through Central America. But I chose Santa Barbara because it's just special. And what I saw here was that there were people who were homeless, and even back then, and there are people who were, mentally a problem, and there were people who were other kinds of problems. They couldn't make a job, couldn't get a good job. They couldn't keep things together. And I saw so often they were disturbing the life of the center city. And what I would see then is the police would show up, you know, and pretty soon they'd be taken, you know. And they'd be in the jail then, you know. And once they do that enough, then they get into a situation where they can't get help, they can't get housing, they can't get credit, they can't get, you know, they're marked, you know, men mostly. And so I began to think, well, this business of incarceration is counterproductive. It's kind of like a sausage factory. They put out people, you know, by hook or by crook, who then they have no way of making it in our society. They're kind of ruined people. And then you really have a problem. So it seemed to me that the problem in Santa Barbara with incarceration was to head them off at the pass, you know, stop the process before it gets underway. Treatment, education, housing, and so on like that. That's what we need rather than simply warehousing.
Yeah, I think your point, as I understand your point, is to me, seems to me so obviously true. If, according to the jail, 40% of the population of the jail, this is the jail's own numbers as I've seen them over the years, 40% of the population of any given jail, and especially Santa Barbara County Jail, is in need of mental health care and treatment.
Right.
And you know, maybe somebody can say, well, there are multiple murderers who are psychiatrically disturbed or whatever, but that's not true. I, as public defender, knew this not to be true. And yet, and another huge percentage have substance abuse problems, and the crimes are essentially associated with substance abuse problems, alcohol, drugs, other problems. So a large percentage of the population in the jail could be, as you said, headed off at the pass.
Right.
And put into some other facility. And I think the general public sort of has understood that in Santa Barbara County.
Right. I believe that's true. It's just how much. You know, housing first, we talked about that. And I was just trying to check, and it seemed to me that about now 350, 400 people a year are being housed who need it. Chronic, you know, lack of housing being remedied. In other words, there are efforts in this county, serious efforts. Yeah,
you can certainly, I want to get back on this other subject for a moment, but you can certainly diminish the people who are locked in custody, put into custody by providing them alternative places to live. And there are people who live in jails. That's a big one. And a lot of people who live in jails because that's the choice given to them. But let me mention the hypothesis I just posed was that the public agrees with us that jails are not the best place for this population. Twice, the sheriff and the county have put funding mechanisms on the ballot asking the public to support a new jail.
Right.
And what happened?
Well, yeah, but I think the enlightened public says we don't want a new jail that's going to be like the current jail.
Well, we don't see anything good coming out of jails.
That's right. In other words...
So the point that we want to get this on the record, the public overwhelmingly defeated those requests for jails. And
61 to 39, both times.
Both times.
2000, 2010, 61 to 39.
So, and it wasn't just the people who are anti-tax. This is people who are just anti the idea that this is a terrible way to spend money.
That's right.
And yet the county has resisted historically, literally since my beginning here in '75, providing for health care facilities, providing for residential care, walk-in clinic care, other facilities. We have a psychiatric health unit which holds 16 people.
Yeah.
I always have to bring this up because I'm so outraged by it. And we have need to house hundreds and hundreds of people who are acting out psychiatrically or otherwise. And yet where they go, they end up in
the jail,
which is the worst place for them.
Yeah. There is a kind of success story with the housing first, because, you know, since we've got that C3H,
Right.
you know, the county coalition,
Yeah.
and we have these others, you know, working in tandem, whether it's Habitat for Humanity, or whether it's what are some of these other organizations that we have around town that are working with housing, so that we are making progress there. Maybe we need to have that kind of effort in these other areas like mental health.
Well, I want to discuss I still want to stay on the idea, why is, the voters voted it down twice. We have knowledge that alternative situations diminish the need for jails.
Yeah.
But if we can get that chart on the screen of the crime history, no, it didn't work. Okay, can't get that. Well, there's this general idea that we need more jails because there's more crime.
Yeah.
And I ran into this back in 20 years ago when I was campaigning and fighting all those initiatives that were trying to raise the penal incarceration rate in California and other states. Even then, the crime was coming down, but people had this fear that crime was on the rise because the publicity of it, evening news and the law and order crowd would make you fear. Fear was a great motivator. So we had this idea we should build more jails in order to house more of these dangerous criminals who were creating all this crime, when the fact is crime had been going down and is continued to go down. And even though it was a little bit of a bump recently, it's a small little bump that some people have mischaracterized. Andy Caldwell completely mischaracterized it in a recent op-ed piece in the paper by comparing this year to last year, but ignoring the last 30 years. So there's a big increase year to year, but there's nothing compared to crime rate in California. Violent crime in California is lower than it was in the 1960s. In 1960, it was approximately 3,000 crimes per 100,000 residents, and now it's a little less than 1,000 crimes per 100,000 residents. So people have to understand we don't need these jails for self-protection.
That's right. And since Prop 47, it's improved still more. There's a study coming out of Indiana University, Purdue University. A team was down here and studied county by county by county, California. And these Hoosiers have shown that it's better since Prop 47 was started. And, you know, they're talking about now, how can we use the money from Prop 47 in a constructive way? And, you know, I got this one statistic. It said that there were 4,600 who have fewer. And each one of them costs, it said, $63,000. I don't know. But that turns out to be a
huge amount of money.
It's $136 million.
Well, here's another political lie I wanted to mention, because I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Prop 47, as the viewers would remember, is when the voters of this state decided we had been punishing people too much for too long for crimes that didn't deserve that kind of sentences, and we're just destroying lives and costing us as taxpayers huge amounts of money to incarcerate people who shouldn't be there. So it got redone, and as a result, more people are being let out sooner, and we're reducing the prison population. The governor of California, Jerry Brown, is supposed to take the money that is saved by Prop 47, the kind of costs you're just describing, and put that money back into alternatives, which will help inmates once they're out on the street.
Exactly.
House them, care for them, make sure that they don't recidivate. And yet, his budget this year,
vastly underestimated.
He estimates the savings at $40 million from Prop 47.
No.
And he's only putting $40 million into these programs, which he is required by law to do, but he won't.
Yeah.
When the legislative analyst says the actual savings from Prop 47 will be over $150 million.
That's right. You know, it varies a little bit. So, and one of our judges here in town is of the 13, one of the 13 that's supposed to adjudicate how to distribute those funds, right?
Yeah.
And
but if there is no funds to distribute, it won't matter.
No, but that's very and I know there are people that got after the governor for that because it was such a lowball estimate.
It's a terrible estimate. And what's going to happen is if they don't provide care and housing and services for this population, they will just. California's recidivism rate has been 60 to 70% for years because there is no rehabilitation effort.
Right.
And it's just going to continue. And what it'll do is justify people and saying, well, this proves that we need more jails.
Yeah.
So we end up, I'm going to go back to this, try to get this narrative, because we don't, the show goes pretty quickly.
I know.
We had twice the voters voted it down.
Right.
Once the Board of Supervisors, twice the Board of Supervisors, or 3 times the Board of Supervisors told the sheriff no.
Yeah.
Finally, just recently, the Board of Supervisors caved, and on a 4-to-1 vote decided to go ahead and build it, despite the fact that it was going to cost even more money.
That's right.
So $111 million is the latest cost.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, can you imagine what $111 million might do alternatively?
That's right. And that's just the beginning, because it's every year. That's right. And then the old jail sits there anyway.
And the cost?
The idea that this new jail is going to replace the old jail. What is it, 300 and some spots in the new jail?
No, it's not going to replace the old jail. There are about 1,000 inmates in the county jail.
Yeah.
The 350 will go into the North County, and they'll be probably North County. It'll save some transportation time and cost.
But what about the rest of all, the 700 or whatever it is?
It will with the declining population. There are some populations of inmates that are being moved into the jail. But the cost of renovating that jail is going to be excessively high.
Yeah.
But the point being, we're spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars
That's right.
on jails.
That's right.
And yet, the idea of building a locked care facility, multiple walk-in clinics, a counseling centers for these populations to come and go to and avoid going back into the jail is never funded.
No. And in fact, what they're talking about doing is closing down the honor farm here at this jail. Was about 150. I have a friend that has gone to that jail for every week for years. He told me that the only place in that jail he ever experienced the people being treated properly was at the honor farm. And that's what they're going to close down. They want to close that down because it'll save, $1 million or something like that. But these are the kinds, we need an honor farm, we need a farm, and just where people can learn all these other skills, much more than the present honor farm. The skills that would let them, animal husbandry, let them learn how to grow crops, let them learn how to bricklay.
Make wine. Well, it's true. But here's another one of these things, anomalies that I don't know why they're allowed to go unaccounted. Right. The sheriff wanted to build, back when he first proposed these things in his grandiosity, in addition to the 300 and some bed jail, he wanted to build a thing he called the STAR complex. One of these silly acronyms, Sheriff's Transfer in Readmission, Rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation,
Center, something like that.
You're leaving.
And the idea was there was going to be 228 beds,
that's right.
Transitional jail, 228-bed transitional jail in addition to 350-bed jail, in addition to the 600 or 700-bed jail in the South County. And he said he had a grant of $38.9 million to build that. The Board of Supervisors was apparently not satisfied that that was a proper role for a sheriff, thank God. At least they had some sense there. And said no to it. But my question is, what happened to that money?
Well, of course, it was turned right back into the state because they said they would not, anything else wouldn't be acceptable. Either they did what they said they were going to do the STAR thing, or nothing. And so they were, that was what I understood. There was an absolute refusal on the part of the state.
It had to be run by the sheriff or nobody?
It had to be that plan which was submitted or none, because the funds were already allocated throughout the state, and that was the money allocated, and it was to be for that purpose and no changes.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but it seems to me the county could have used that opportunity to build a similar, but less ambitious facility. I mean, if they could do it for $38 million versus $111 million for his other jail.
That's right.
Building rehab centers and walk-in centers and even locked care facilities for mentally is much cheaper than building jails.
Oh, absolutely. And you could do it with professionals. That's what, see, one of the problems I've seen them fighting back and forth with, they're going to take these people who work for the sheriff, who are really in law enforcement, and we're going to give them...
Well, they'll never be the right personnel.
But that was the basic idea.
Well, my point going on is why wouldn't the county health care, they now call themselves wellness center or what, county
Sure.
behavioral wellness, some title they come up. It used to be called county health, which made sense. Anyway, they resisted for years of being involved in providing services for the mentally ill. They have one little psychiatric health facility with 16 beds. They take the most valuable clients and put them there, and everybody else is either shipped out of county at huge expense, millions of dollars, or put into the jail. Why wasn't somebody investigating the possibility of this $38 million grant to build some facilities for county health?
I don't have an answer to that, but I think also you have to add to that is all these people who never are offered any help. You know, go down to that library any day of the week and just sit in there and notice how many disturbed people are there.
You're talking about the county main library?
I'm talking about our main library, downtown
Santa Barbara.
But that's just one thing. Walk the streets. You know, when I moved back here 12 years ago, I gave up my car and I walk everywhere. I walk all over the place. I see the streets too, and there's no monitoring by the police. There's nobody on beats. And people, you know, down there, and they're disruptive, and then someone who's an owner, I don't blame them, they dial and said, we got some big problem right down here, you got to come down and clean it up. Today I was walking down the street, here's the guy just lying out on State Street, about, what, the 1200 block, just stretched out on the sidewalk. I think he didn't have one limb. There was a wheelchair sitting there, there was somebody else. I can't remember why I couldn't stop it. But, you know, there are people down on State Street that are homeless. There are people down there that are causing disturbances. There are people down there that are, whatever their problems are, they're drunk and so on. What do? If someone gets mad enough, they call the police and then they take them off to jail.
Well, they actually don't take them to jail, probably take them down to the sobering station, let them sober up, and they don't like to drive them to the actual jail.
But, okay, what about the ones that are causing a disturbance, screaming and hollering and so on like that?
They will do exactly the minimum they have to do, because the city police don't like the obligation of driving out to the jail and transferring. They lose an officer's time for hours and hours of time. So, but I think the point I think you're getting to, and I hope is the point, is these people don't belong in jail.
Absolutely.
That we should have some type of psychiatric units, intervention, detention, and assistant units where this population could be taken, and hope. And there are a few in town. There's one or two facilities, but they're always full. I saw in the paper last week that they built a 35 condo or apartment 35 unit apartment in Isla Vista. For the transient population, the homeless population. They filled up within a few weeks, 2 years ago, and nothing's opened since.
Well, the last census, the city, you're right about this thing, but the county, when they did that HUD census, you know, it was about 1,500 in the county who were homeless. And you know that 15% of them are veterans too.
Right.
And there's a lot of them are children. But it's every group, you know. We have wonderful people sleeping out every night, and all up and down. All you have to do is walk down State Street. You just, you know, go to the side. Today I went over, I took food over to this encampment, you know, which every Thursday, and I said, well, where's Mark? He didn't make it. Mark fell. He has a job. He would show me his job. He had the, you know, the smartphone. He'd show me where he was working, but he was homeless. And he fell and broke a couple of ribs. He was taken to the hospital. He didn't make it. But you get my point.
The point I think is that we're building jails at $111 million jails, going to lock people up in there and hold them for a period of time in order to make work and employment for very expensively paid employees, when we don't provide facilities for the actual obvious needy and who don't belong in a jail and can't get any other care.
That's right, and they may earn even, they may have jobs even, but they don't make enough to get the money together to get the services that they need, and they're our people. They're ours.
But what about the jail? Why? So is there anything we can do? We have a couple minutes left here. Is there anything we can do to deter or deflect or change this steamship that's pretty much underway? Is there any way we can stop this from happening?
I'm no expert. All I think of is, I see what's happened. And I say it's impossible to change this now. That would be my thought. Now, you probably have a different take. Someone said to me, well, let's see after we get through the nominations. What day do we have? 7th of June. We're going to go
the California primary.
California primary, and so on like that. And then we'll see. Maybe these people will get. They'll feel better and they'll vote right.
You're talking about the Board of Supervisors. I think there's some possibility. There's no doubt there's some posturing occurred on this last vote when people who know better voted to give the sheriff this dream that they've been chasing for 50 years. But maybe, I suspect, and we don't have much time to do it, but I would suspect the only way to do it now is to hold the sheriff accountable in some contractual obligation that he will use that new jail to do the things that he says he's now in favor of doing in terms of rehabilitation. That there would be a target toward recidivism, that he would, instead of having a 60 or 70% recidivism, he promised to get it in half. Instead of doing, instead of having people return with mental health problems, he would find care for them that would keep them from returning. Instead of doing, so maybe they can put some targets would actually hold him accountable to the promises he made in trying to sell the jail as being a rehabilitation center, which is a joke.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. One of the problems I see is, okay, so we get him to do these promises. Where is it going to be done and by whom?
Right.
That would have to be incorporated into that idea of yours.
Right.
In other words, it's got to be that people who know what they're doing are going to be doing the rehabilitation or whatever you want to call it. I think that's a good idea. And my own idea was to head them off at the pass. Let's get programs going like this.
But we need the money for the programs, and the money went to the jail. No, it went to the jail. That $38 million should go somewhere. I'm going to stop now because we have a really big moment right here. Ali Adchak, who's been a director at Santa Barbara at this show for a good many years and worked at the Santa Barbara TV for 28 years, is retiring. Ali says she's retiring and going to go out and make a more interesting life for herself than working in here. But Ali, are you willing to come out here and be on camera for a moment? Come on, Ali. Oh no, she's shaking her head. No.
No.
Ali, I really wish you would, but if you won't, I'm just going to say thank you so much from this side of the camera for the work that you did for the few years I've been here, and for the people, David Ross, and Bud Booth, and others who have been on the show over the years. Really, really appreciate your help. Thank you. And, of course, thank you, Juanita, for today's work.
I see it's good. Very good.